Hello and welcome to Sonder. This is a knitting and sewing and crafting and reading podcast coming from the very beautiful state of Colorado. My name is Maggie. I am a knitter and sewist and bibliophile and new doctor living in Denver, Colorado. I'm petting my puppy Yampa, who's right here. And he's so big now. Oh, hello. He is the sweetest boy. And he's just hanging out right next to me. So I thought, I didn't want you to think that I was just like stroking my legs weirdly. There is a dog that's right here. Anyhow, it is August 5th. I cannot believe that it's already August. I wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about the reading that I did for the month of July. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the books that I read in July, the books that I'm reading right now, and then some of the purchases that I bought. So some of the books that I bought that are sort of right on my radar and something that I'm really going to want to read in the next couple of months. I'm sitting in a little bit of a different place right now. I have several bookshelves in our home, but this is the one that I keep sort of all of the books that I really want to get to reading immediately, and then some of the books that I've already read this year. I like to keep it a little bit separate so that I can see the progress that I've made throughout the year, and then also just have books really close to where I'm spending the majority of my time that are books that I really want to get to sooner rather than later. So a lot of the ones on this shelf have been in my TBR for a really long time. Some of them are Stephen King novels that I just got. I won't really go through it, but I just wanted to let you know that things have moved a little bit. In general, I am doing okay. Right now, I am coming off of a call shift, so like I said, I am a new doctor, so I'm an intern in internal medicine and pediatrics here at the University of Colorado, and I really, really love my job, but I've had a really hard couple of days, and I'm not going to go into it too much here because I think it's important to preserve the privacy of my patients, but it is interesting, and I think it's something that people don't think about, the amount of trauma and vicarious trauma that doctors go through in our job. I was talking to my husband, and we just have such a strange profession. When my husband tells me that he has a bad day, it's like his boss was a little rude, or someone he was talking to on the phone was like a little snappy, or he didn't meet a deadline, or something like that. And I think it's important to remember for anyone out there who has a doctor in their lives that oftentimes when we say we've had a bad day, it means that one of our patients has died. And that is just a different level of pain, I think, than like the average job. And so I think the best thing to do in those situations, I've had a lot of people say like, oh, like what happened, and I think a lot of people want to talk about what happened when they've had a bad day at work, but I would just say for anyone who's knows someone or loves someone in the medical profession at all, just sitting with that and telling them, that you love them and that you're here if you want to talk, but you also understand if they don't. Because there's a lot of different reasons why people don't want to talk about what they've experienced at work. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm obviously coming at this from a weird place, but I did do some amazing reading in July, pardon me. And I also feel, sorry, Yampa is like chewing on a bone right there, and he is a lovely pooch, and I'm just going to let him do whatever he wants to do, because this is his house too. I also have my cat, Sansa, who's just making herself known. So the whole menagerie is here. Where was I? I think I was talking about depressing things from work. But yeah, I think I still read a lot in July, and reading and knitting are something that really, they bring me a sense of calm and a sense of escape. And so part of the reason why I started this podcast is to keep myself accountable, to keep doing those things that bring me so much joy. And so I've used reading as a form of escape this month, and weirdly have read a lot of like horror, which I think sometimes horror can be helpful to just, I don't know, sometimes when you're having a bad time, it's like good to read about other things that are bad. I don't know. Full disclosure, it's just been the past couple of days that have been hard. The rest of this month has been really fantastic, and that's just the way it goes in medicine. So without further ado, I just want to talk a little bit about my statistics from this month. So in the month of July, I read 10 books and 3,387 pages, which is crazy. For me, being like in the exact middle of my residency, you know, like in like busy wards months where I have call and all things like that. And for people who don't know, call is essentially when you come to work early in the morning at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. and then you stay through the night into the next morning and then stay for some of the rounds in the morning. So it's usually about a 26 to 28 hour shift depending on, well, maybe like 24 to 28 hour shift, kind of depending on what happens and who you're admitting. And so just the fact that I'm on a call month, and we do that every 4 days, so it's often that you're staying up, you know, all night long. And so the fact that I'm reading this much is just, I think that it is holding me accountable to have this podcast because I want to keep reading so that I have things to talk about. And also, I'm just finding so much joy in the stuff I'm reading right now. So, you know what? I will be right back. Mr. Yampa has a pencil or pen that I don't want him to chew up. Too late. Anyway, so 10 books, 3,387 pages. I read 1 historical fiction, 1 sci-fi or fantasy, 1 literary fiction, 4 thriller/horror, 2 romance, and 1 memoir/nonfiction. The authors that I read, 6 were female, 3 to 4 were male. There's one author, which I'll get to, that I'm not sure they have said their pronouns, and I'm not sure exactly what their pronouns are. I believe that they were assigned male at birth, but I don't know that either. But through a lot of the memoir, they use he, him pronouns, but obviously that's like people using them on them. So I don't know what their pronouns are. So 3 to 4 are male and 0 to 1 are non-binary. 4 are BIPOC and 1 was LGBTQIA. I had 2 5-star books, 5 4-star books, 2 3-star books, 1 2-star book, and 1 2-star book and 0 1-star books, which is good. I don't know that I'll ever have a 1-star book because for it to be 1 star, I essentially have to like absolutely hate it. So I just wanted to start from the beginning and go through all of the books that I read. So the first book that I read this month was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, and I absolutely loved this book. It follows, I think the thing that I love more than anything, pardon me, about this book is the rep. So not only does it have a biracial couple, it also deals, the main character, Chloe Brown, has fibromyalgia and a lot of chronic pain. And when you work in medicine, that's something that I'm going to be very frank with you, can be really frustrating to treat because your patients are in pain, but but there's very little that you can actually do to treat that pain. And so I felt as a medical professional that it gave me some insight into what it means to live with that disease and how it impacts you day to day and how devastating it is, and will really help me treat my patients who have similar diagnoses with more empathy and compassion. And that's part of why I love reading so much, is just that it gives you a glimpse into someone else's life and changes the way you see the world and the way you treat people in your life. And so I absolutely loved this. It is a hate to love trope. It is about a woman named Chloe Brown who has a list of things she wants to do to make her life more interesting, and her what is it called? Her super, Redford, who is an artist and brooding, and it's just so much fun. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's very rare that I give a romance 5 out of 5 stars. It has to be like, it has to like make me cry, but also be amazing and make me, I feel like for a romance to get 5 out of 5 stars, it has to like both like make me cry, hopefully tears of joy, like Red, White, and Royal Blue, while also making me like hot and bothered, like Red, White, and Royal Blue. Like that, I think that might be the only romance that I've given 5 out of 5 stars that isn't a classic, like Pride and Prejudice. Anyway, clearly I love the hate to love trope. I really loved Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I've already read in August the second book, and I'll talk about that next month. So the next thing I read is My Sister, the Serial Killer by, oh, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, and I'm sorry, but My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyin Khan Braithwaite. And I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is an incredible book, though. I absolutely loved this book. The only reason why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 is I wanted a little bit more. I just wanted a little bit more glimpse into this sister relationship and the family relationship, and I loved it so much. So essentially what it is it's about a nurse whose sister is a serial killer, and her sister keeps calling her and asking her to help her come clean up the mess. And she does it because from her perspective, her sister it's all in self-defense, but she starts to realize that maybe that's not true, and maybe it's not in self-defense, and her sister starts to fall for someone that she also is interested in, and it just like blows up. It is fascinating. The way that it's written is in these like really small little vignettes, which was kind of, I've read another memoir like that recently, which is right here in the Dream House. So this is also written in little vignettes. And both of them, I just thought, were such creative and fascinating ways to tell a story in these just little glimpses. It was awesome. I highly recommend it. It's also really short and really interesting, so highly, highly recommend. The next book I read was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. I also gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought this was amazing. The reason why I didn't give this 5 out of 5 is that I actually just wanted a little bit more about the main character and her like best friends. Like I just wanted a little bit more from their relationship. But this is a really interesting story about like when white people think that they're helping but actually are really hurting, and like trying to tell a story that's not theirs to tell. And just, I was so infuriated so many times while I read this book. And I'm obviously not a person of color, so I'm sure that there were things that I didn't even get mad about that are infuriating. And so I thought this was just a really beautiful glimpse into, you know, a few months in this woman's life. And yeah, I really loved it. I think that everyone should read it. It's a really fast read. It's interesting. I thought that the relationship between the main character and the little girl that she's a nanny for was really beautiful and heartfelt. And yeah, it was wonderful. I highly recommend it. I loved the ending. I thought it was great. The next book that I read was a horror, The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Full disclosure, I really love the like haunted house vibe. And this one was just fun. Like, it was just full of haunted house, like haunted motel stuff. There was like a lot of different things going on. I don't want to give anything away, and I don't really want to talk about the plot because I think that horror and thriller in general is best when you kind of go in not knowing anything and you're just kind of trying to figure stuff out as while the protagonist is figuring things out, or yeah, while the characters are figuring things out. But essentially this follows two point of views that are separated by a couple of decades. One is a woman in her like 20s who has moved to a really small town and starts working at a motel, and then she disappears. And it's kind of about like what happened to her and where she is, and there's ghosts, or are they, like, mysterious? And then it's about her niece, who after her niece's mother dies, so after the other character's sister dies, her niece wants to find out more about what happened to her aunt, and so she goes back to this small town in search of her aunt. And it's just a really interesting juxtaposition of the two different points of view. And yeah, it was spooky and interesting, and I thought the family dynamics were great, and I loved it. I think that it was one of the better like horror books that I've read in a long time. The next book I read was another horror. This is The Troop by Nick Cutter, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I actually did read this. I'm sorry, some of these I don't have the actual physical copy. This one in particular I gave to my mom, who also loves horror. I think I got my love of horror from my whole family. Everyone in my family really loves horror. And so I left it with her because I was reading it at her house and she was really interested in it. But essentially, this book follows a troop master and his kids that he is like on a camping trip, and what happens to them when a man comes kind of out of the water. They're on like a secluded island. A man comes out of the water and he is starving and he's just eating everything that he can get his hands on, and things devolve. I would say it's like kind of like body horror meets like Lord of the Flies. But I really enjoyed it, kind of. I don't know. It's funny because I read it because I feel like so many booktubers are like talking about how it's like one of their favorite horrors of all time and it's so scary and whatever. Sorry, I took my tea bag out. I'm just going to awkwardly set it right there. It's not very sanitary, but I'm not going to reuse it. Anyway, I feel like a lot of people on BookTube were like, this is the scariest thing I've ever read, like, ugh, you know. And I think because I work in medicine, I am just not that freaked out by body horror because, like, I've had my hands in a lot of bodies, like, inside them. And so I'm just not that grossed out by body horror. And so for me, it just, like, was kind of, like, eerie, and I liked the kind of multimedia aspect of it. Like, it would kind of have, like, some reports, like government reports, and then also some journalistic things and stuff like that, and it was like multiple points of view, and so I liked how it was written. I just thought it was going to be a lot more like scary than it was, and I just wasn't that scared by it. Like, for me, even though I don't think I believe in ghosts, I find like paranormal ghost type stuff to be a little bit more like spooky and creepy crawly, and just don't really get spooked by body horror because, like, it's my job. Like, I see gross stuff all the time. I like stick knives and stuff all the time. It's just like, I don't know. And so I thought that it was like a fun read. I read the whole thing, but I could kind of like take it or leave it. And like, for me to give that book to someone else is like a testament to the fact that I just thought it was like okay, because usually even if I like a book, then I'm not gonna give it away. Does that make sense? So anyway, it was alright. I think if you're really scared by body horror, then like that'll be a great book to read because that's like pretty much all it is. But if you're not really scared by body horror, then you're not going to be very scared by it. Anyway, so The Troop by Nick Cutter, it was just like meh. The next book I read was Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. I loved this. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It was so fun. I mean, who's surprised that I love this? Pride and Prejudice is like one of my favorite books of all time, and this is essentially just like Pride and Prejudice, but they're also suffragettes, and it was great. It was also just like super hot. The love scenes were great. It was exactly what I wanted to read. Like, it just brought me so much joy. It was just full of joy. Like, only good things happened. I loved it. I loved it so much that I recommended it to my sister-in-law, and she sent me this text message that was like, Maggie. And here's the thing. Both of us, I feel like, are like kind of picky. Like, I will read romance, but like usually I'm not like gushing over romance because normally it's something that I just read to like have brain candy, but this was like brain candy meets like really compelling characters meets like fun Victorian time period, and there's dukes and duchesses, and I just loved it. Yeah, it was so fun. In like suffragettes, it's just like that is something I can get behind. But yeah, so I told my sister-in-law about this, and she also really likes like literary fiction, and she read it while she was on vacation, and she was like, Maggie, I loved it so much that I read it twice on vacation in 1 week, which I was just like, yes, I did it. Yeah, I highly recommend this. If you are looking for something that will just bring you joy and just make you smile, then this is a great book for you to pick up. A lot of these books I've talked about, like, I would also highly recommend Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Like, these are both equally amazing, and I think it just, like, depends where you want to read about. Like, do you want to read about England in the Victorian times, or do you want to read about, like, modern day England? Choose your, pick your poison. They're both fantastic. Like, so fun. The next book that I read is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This was Chef's Kiss amazing. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely fucking loved it. I immediately told my husband to read it, and he has also since read it. It was so good. It was so good that I actually, like, in my Book of the Month box for this month, I put it in there because I had listened to it on an audiobook on on Libby. And I was like, I want a physical copy of this book. It was so good. This is a sci-fi contemporary novel in which you have April May, and she is the protagonist who is leaving her job in the middle of the night, and she finds this huge statue that has some really peculiar characteristics, and she decides to film a YouTube video of herself kind of like interviewing this thing, and she names it Carl. And then she becomes like an overnight celebrity because it turns out that these Carls have been like appeared out of nowhere in like over 50 cities all across the world at exactly the same time. And so it's about trying to find out what the fuck these Carls are. It's about friendship. It's about relationships. The character is bisexual, and so I think that it just has like great representation. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was like an unreliable protagonist. She is not perfect, but she is just like living her life and messy, and the second one just came out, and I will talk about that soon. The next book I read was All Boys Are Blue by George M. Johnson. Also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This was incredible. This is the memoir that I'm like unsure if George M. Johnson, I don't know what their pronouns are. And so I'm going to use they, them, theirs because I don't know. And just seems better to err on the side of caution. But this book was amazing. It is about George M. Johnson's life and their family and navigating the world as a in his words, young Black boy growing up in the South, and just the relationships that he has and the family that he has. And I think the thing that I really loved about this was the love and support that he has with all of his different family members. And it was just, there were hard things to read in this memoir, but it was also just so full of love and companionship, and it was just a really beautiful collection of essays that kind of made up a memoir. I think he calls it a manifesto, which I think is perfect. And it's so funny because I used to think that I hate memoirs, but I think that there's a lot to learn from memoirs if you're reading them about people who are very different from yourself, to have a better understanding of what it means to be them. And I know that everybody's experiences are different, but I think it helps you understand a little bit more about what people are going through. And for me, as someone who is a doctor, I think it's really valuable to read about other people's lives, and lives that I'm not privy to, things that I can't see as a cisgendered white woman. There's just parts of this world that I can't, I've never experienced, and so reading Own Voices is something that I find really powerful, to have a little bit deeper understanding of cultures that I'll never be able to be a part of. So yeah, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, 5 out of 5, so fucking good. The next book that I read was kind of a dud. It was The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. Everyone seems to love this. I didn't. It's funny, like, I don't know what I don't like about it, but I just didn't like it. Essentially what it is, the premise is something that I should fucking love. So the premise is that it is a historical fiction that takes place in Kentucky, and it's about the relationships of the women. And by relationships, I mean more like the romantic relationships between the women and their respective partners. It's about the relationships between the women who like are part of the like traveling library that bring books to different families. And the thing that I loved about this novel was the time, was like the setting, and then also the interpersonal relationships between the different women who were delivering books, and how those women interacted with the families that are very weary of outsiders, and also how they're promoting education and learning in a place that historically did not have any access to that. And so, and I thought it was a beautiful description of how people love learning. The thing that want to learn more, even if some people think that they don't want to, they actually do. And if they have the opportunity, they will really seek it out. What I didn't love is that most of the story is actually about the like romantic relationships of the various women with like men in their community, rather than like the interpersonal relationships and friendships of the women themselves. I think that it would have been like a much more powerful narrative if it would have focused on that rather than focusing on the romantic relationships. I also just felt that Jojo Moyes, while one of the main characters in this is English and like coming over from England, and Jojo Moyes herself is an English writer, even when we weren't in that character's point of view, but in other characters' point of view, she would use English terminology that Americans don't use that would like really pull me out of the narrative. Like, it would just annoy me because like, like people who are American don't say stick, they say cane, and like we don't say cue, we say line. And like, I really like English literature, and I've read a lot of like contemporary English novels as well. And like when I'm reading like Get a Life, Chloe Brown, I am not thrown off at all by that because that is the way that they speak in England. But like, it just seems like you're not using, like you didn't research enough or something. Like, why would you use those words? I just don't understand it. So, I think that kind of turned me off, and then it just turned me off that it was like too much about the romantic relationships. But anyhow, so I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. I don't think that I will read anything else by Jojo Moyes. I just think like this is probably the only book that like would have really intrigued me and was not that good. So yeah. some of my friends like absolutely fucking loved this book, and so I'm a little bit scared to talk to them about it because I just didn't like it. And so, yeah, if you like it, you do you. I'm just talking about my own preferences. Anyway, this is the perfect day to just drink tea and talk about books, is it not? All right, this is getting long. The last book that I read in the month of July is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I finished reading this book while I was on a call shift in the middle of the night in the hospital, and it was so fun. This is a novel. It's interesting. I've read like 2 horrors that are like both like point of views at different times. I read this. I mean, everyone's been talking about this book. Essentially, this book is about a haunted house and a family that was living in this haunted house, and the horror novel that was written about, or like horror memoir that was written about living at that house, kind of like the Amityville Horror. And then the daughter who like, after her dad dies, who wrote the book, like goes back to the house and like tries to see if it was real, because she like can't remember this time in her life at all. I gave this, I think, 3 out of 5 stars. Yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. Which for me, like, for a horror means, like, I enjoyed it. I thought this book was really fun. I thought it was really interesting. I did not see the, like, twists and turns coming when they did, which is great. I thought that the spooky haunted house vibes were really entertaining. I just thought it was, like, fine. I don't know. I think, like, in the end, I was just kind of like, okay, that's what happened. And again, like, it takes a lot for me to really like a book, and I think a horror book, like, to be, I mean, I always like them. Listen, a 3 out of 5 for a horror book means, like, I found this highly entertaining. I read the whole thing. I enjoyed it. But, like, for me, personally, it's going to be almost impossible for a horror book to get a 5 out of 5 stars. Like, I don't even know how that would be possible, because to get a 5 out of 5 stars for me means that, like, this book changed my life and, like, changed the way I see the world. And so I almost never give a 5 out of 5 stars. But yeah, I really, really loved it. I thought that it was a beautiful description of, like, family. And I just thought that it was, like, a fun horror novel that, like, gave me goosebumps from time to time. And I think that if you like horror, especially if you like haunted house horror, then you're definitely going to like this. So check it out. I can see that Sean is getting home, and so it's going to be really embarrassing. But the last thing that I wanted to do is just touch on the books that I'm reading right now. So right now I am, you can come in. Shawnee is here. Do you want to come say hi? Shawnee has arrived. Shawnee is getting into crafting himself. Look what you bought. What have you been making?
The good stuff. I'm making frame bags for bicycles.
We're going to have Sean on. He agreed to come talk, so.
Yeah, can't
Look at
give
this.
away all my good content.
This is waxed canvas, so it'll be like kind of waterproof. I like it a lot. It'll lighten up too, just so you know.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, get out. I've gotten very used to just like talking to myself when Sean's in the house, because this is quarantine and we are all living through this together. But anyway, the book that I am reading right now is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I am, 123 pages into this book, and it is fucking amazing. If it keeps going at this rate, it will 100% be a 5 out of 5 book. I love it so much. The family dynamics are something that are just absolutely beautiful and interesting. And also, I think the discussions around colorism is something that obviously I have never experienced myself. And so having the opportunity to learn about this really difficult topic through fiction has been really powerful. And I'll put in some links to some Black booktubers who have been talking about this book, because I don't think that I can do it justice. But I'm currently reading this, and I'm really, really loving it. So yeah, I was going to talk about some of the books that are coming up on my radar, but I feel a little bit awkward because Sean is literally right over there. So I think that I will wrap it up here and hope that everyone is doing well. Bye!